Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. My name's James Finkbeiner, and this is the Alberta Report. Alberta has a long history of coal mining stretching back to the 1870s, and just like our history with oil and gas, coal mining has been one of the pillars that built our beautiful province. Drumheller, Black Diamond, Coaldale, Colehurst, and Coal Banks, or modern-day Lethbridge, all owe part of their beginnings to coal mining. These days, coal development in Alberta has been a hot-button issue. In 2020, Jason Kenney's United Conservative Party rescinded Peter Lougheed's 1976 coal policy that severely limited coal development in the eastern slopes of the Rocky Mountains. This move saw dozens of applications for new mining across the area. After an intense public backlash, primarily driven by activists and misinformation, the policy was put back in place, grinding all progress on new development to a halt. One project at the center of the controversy is Northback's Grassy Mountain Coal Project, and here to speak with me today about this project is Northback's CEO, Mike Young. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Why is this project good for Alberta?
Well, it's good for Alberta in lots of ways. It's a resource development project, so Alberta is a resource province. It makes its money primarily from both food, agriculture, oil and gas, and coal. So it's just another resource project in the province, but it's particularly good for southern Alberta and particularly the Crow's Nest Pass because they don't have a lot of industry down there. Crow's Nest is it's one of the poorest municipalities in Alberta. Most of their revenue is generated through property taxes. They don't have any big industries. So it'd be very good for the local economy. It'd be very good for the First Nations people, the Blackfoot tribe. Down there that's closest is Piikani. They're part of the Blackfoot Nation. There's also Siksika and the Kainai. And so it'd be good for them as well. They're going through some hard times at the moment. Part of that is because there's just no opportunities.
Yeah, so now this mine in this specific area, this isn't a new mine, is it? There's already a mine on this location.
Yeah, that's correct. So Crow's Nest Pass has a huge history of coal mining and, underground. It's there's several not municipalities, but several towns stretched out along a long corridor, and they're all coal towns. And Grassy Mountain itself is the northern end of a mine called Green Hills. And when you go through Crow's Nest, as a lot of people do, next to the golf course, you'll see some old mine infrastructure, and that was part of this Green Hills mine. And to the north of it was Grassy, and they mined a little bit underground, and then in the 50s and 60s, they mined as an open pit. And what they basically did was up the crest of the mountain, they did a small pit. They didn't go very deep because the technology at the time wouldn't allow it, and the coal price didn't allow it. So it got closed in about 1969, we think. And then after that, the owners of the mine logged the area to the east. So it was logged. Together with the mining that was done, and back then there was no such thing as reclamation. They just sort of dumped stuff on the side of the hill and left. That and the logging, it's a pretty disturbed area.
So isn't part of this project also reclamation on the mine that's already there?
Yeah, that's certainly one of the things that our stakeholders want to see, is they want to see that mine cleaned up. So there's been some trees have grown back, but by and large, there's just a lot of waste piles on the side of the hill. It's quite dangerous. There's a lot of openings. There's old mine openings from underground and on surface. When they abandoned the operation, they didn't clean it up. They made some safety things by just putting up, barriers to entry. But by and large, there was no reclamation whatsoever. And so certainly the First Nations would like to be able to use the land again. Recreationists would like to be able to use the land. And so as part of a modern mining process, we would go through and clean up the mess.
So you'd be able to go in, clean up what was already there, and then kind of the reward for going in, cleaning up this project would be being able to mine it again and kind of take care of the area.
Yeah, it'd be one of the, you call them fringe benefits. So that would certainly be the case. And, we had a person come to site who works for an NGO. We brought her up onto the mountain, and we actually have a policy of inviting anyone that wants to come and see it up the mountain. So, your viewers could certainly reach out to us to do that. So we brought this person up the mountain, and firstly, they were amazed that the lakes that are still left behind aren't these steaming cauldrons of boiling, bubbling, acidic water. They're actually quite good water. Mm-hmm. But she also remarked that, plants were able to grow back on their own. And would it be the case if we were actually doing planned reclamation, if it would be a better outcome? And we said, absolutely. And, she gave us some other suggestions. And when she did that, one of the things she asked about was, are you going to build wildlife corridors and refuges? And we said, yeah, that's something we'd really like to do. So yes, it's mining, and yes, it's disruptive, but at the end it would be modern reclamation, and in the end it would be better land use for the stakeholders in the area.
So right now it's not in great shape, but Albertans are fairly familiar with reclamation projects. Like specifically in the oil sands, we've seen areas that were completely strip mined returned back into boreal forest and productive wetlands again. So we would actually, so you're saying the same type of reclamation that would be planned and thought out for the entirety of the project, this whole area in the end would be in a better space than what it is right now.
Yeah, eventually over time. I mean, we make we don't hide the fact that it's going to be a mine. But one of the things we can do is the way we want to mine it is you can progressively reclamate as you go. So you start reclamation at the south end where we would start mining, and then as you move forward, reclamate. And one of the things we're really proud of is that the new designs that we're assessing will have much lower impact than previous designs. And also we intend on putting a lot of the waste rock material back into the pits. And that was something that a lot of people try to do. And we're being very deliberate in the mine planning and how we do that. So we'd like to reclamate as we go. There's a lot of concerns, and it's historically people have walked away from their commitments, but we won't do that. People are concerned that you'll walk away from it afterwards. But if you're progressively reclamating, not only are you reducing that liability at the end of the mine, but you're proving to people your bona fides that you're going to follow through.
Yeah, well, that would be the same type of reclamation plan that a lot of the oil and gas companies have.
That's
As
right.
They're done in an area, they start the reclamation process. And some of the earliest areas that were mined first are almost completely reclaimed now.
And unrecognizable.
Exactly. You can't tell that they were mining there. They're beautiful, they're cleaner, they're healthier than they were before. So that's one of the biggest things I think that people don't understand about this project is that there's already a mine there. The mine was just left. It was abandoned. The day that they left, nothing's really changed in that area except for some small measures here and there. But, on net, in the end, the environment would be cleaner and healthier. But this project's already been rejected by the regulators. Part of the reason that they gave was there wasn't enough net benefit versus the environmental cost. Why are you guys seeking to revive the project now?
So I just want to really drill into the wording of your question. So it wasn't the project that was denied. It was a development application for the project that was denied. And why is that important? Well, a lot of people say, well, the project was denied, it's dead, right?
Yeah.
And that's not the case. And the greatest metaphor is you buy an old house and you want to knock it down and build a new house. Okay, so you've bought the block, you own it, just like we own Grassy. Some part of it is Crown land and part of it is private. So we own this project, the house, the block. We're going to knock the house down. That's been done. We want to build a new house. And so you put your plan into the planners, the city planners, and the neighbors get to have a look at it and they go, oh, it's too big. It's shadowing my roses. I can see into my backyard. Nope. And the regulator goes, nope, that house isn't allowed. So you go away and you come back with another plan, which addresses the issues. It's no different. You have a right. This is Canada. This isn't Russia. You have a right to come back with another application that addresses the issues you're talking about. And that's what we want to do.
So, like a lot of people are saying it's legally dead. It's a zombie project, and that's obviously not true then. So what you're working on is you're working to address the original concerns from the original application and help address the concerns of the neighbors and different land users in that area. What kind of concerns from the local residents are you hearing?
So the local residents, like leaving, well, let's go back to the original application and the joint review panel. So they were talking about fish, selenium, West Slope cutthroat trout in one of the two creeks, and the economic benefit. So the economic benefit, coal prices are double what they were back then, and they're not going south. Coal demand is increasing, steel making coal particularly, the kind of coal that we're looking at. And we actually have steel companies coming to us because they can see a shortage of steelmaking coal coming, and they have, you know, these are Japanese, Korean steelmakers, Indian steelmakers. They're not moving to green steel. So metallurgical coal demand is going to be there for a long time, and if you have a shortage, the price goes up. So the economic benefit to the region is going to be higher. What we're doing is we're looking at those concerns, water, Gold Creek, and we're redesigning the mine to really mitigate or completely avoid them. The locals' concerns are around dust, and we have dust suppression. The JRP actually in their report said that while dust was an issue, it wasn't something that was significant. The train loadout, we're looking at addressing some of the issues. People were worried it was going to be this monster tower, like would look like a wheat bin, I guess. We're looking at ways of mitigating that. Water quantity, in reality, doesn't actually use that much water. That's a bit of a myth. So we need to address that through education. So it's kind of an interesting, it's interesting. We have real issues to address, and then we've got educational issues to address because there was a lot of mythology around coal and Grassy particularly. So we've got a great team doing our external affairs, and so we've got a great technical team addressing the technical issues. So it's a bit of there's two fronts.
Yeah, and with the water issues, honestly, when this project was first announced, I thought the same thing that a lot of Albertans thought. Most of them thought thermal coal, and we'd obviously phased out thermal coal and our thermal coal power generation in the province. A lot of our thermal coal mines across the province have shut down because we've got lots of it and we're not burning it here anyways. But the second thing that a lot of people were upset about was selenium in the water, and the water system that comes out of this is the headwaters that feed the South Saskatchewan, the Old Man, pretty much every major water system in southern and southeastern Alberta. So what are you guys doing to address those concerns? And what's the difference in the metallurgical coal versus the thermal coal?
So let's do your last question first. So metallurgical coal is used for steel making. 75% of the world's steel is made today using metallurgical coal in a blast furnace. That technology is around the world. It's very modern. It's used in Asia, China, Japan, Korea. Those would be our major customers. We still have blast furnaces in parts of Canada and America. So metallurgical coal is part of that process, and it cannot be replaced in a blast furnace. It is used in the furnace it has various attributes I won't get into. Not all coal can be metallurgical coal. It's a very specific subset. All coal can be thermal coal. And then thermal coal, of course, is used to generate power. And so, as you pointed out, Alberta has moved away from that. They're still exporting thermal coal. Coal is growing globally, mainly because of Asia, but in North America and Europe, thermal coal use is declining, right? Because there's other power sources coming on stream. Getting to selenium. So selenium is a byproduct of a lot of industries: agriculture, human waste, power generation, and coal mining. And we know, because of tech and the legacy issues there, that selenium is an issue that people worry about. For us, it's an education issue because selenium is actually something you need. If you were to go buy Smart Water Black Label, you would have selenium in that bottle. In fact, the water in that bottle would be supersede BC's water quality standards for selenium, but not Calgary's. But selenium is an issue. Now, we have the benefit of starting new, and we have a multi-phase approach. So the first thing we want to do is identify which rocks have more selenium, because not all the rocks have it. So by doing that, we can avoid generating it in the first place. Like what happens is the rock gets exposed to rain and oxygen, and the selenium goes into the water system. So the first thing to do is find the selenium-bearing rock and isolate that from the elements, if you like. The second thing is we have the advantage that there are many selenium treatment processes that work. So people look at Teck and they go, it doesn't work. Well, it does. Teck is dealing with historic mining methods that created the problem. And it's very difficult to retrofit once you've created those issues. We're starting new. So that means we can look at what works. We have a bit of a menu, and we can say that works, that works, that works. And what's really interesting is there's a mine called Tent Mountain, which which is right up against the border of BC, just in the Crow's Nest Pass. And it's an old mine, and there is a stream there that has high selenium from the mine. It goes into a wetland, and when it comes out of the wetland, the selenium's gone. So there are natural processes at work, and we have that on site as well. So we have many, many ways of dealing with it. The key thing is that we have to prove to the regulator that we can do it before we can mine. So the public's safe.
Yeah,
the public is safe, right? Some people say I don't trust the regulator. Well, that's another issue for another day. But we have to prove to the regulator we can do it, and we won't get a license to operate unless we can. And so that's the approach we're taking. But we're looking at avoidance and mitigation first, and that way you don't even have the problem.
So by going in, reclaiming the site, upgrading it, bringing it up to today's environmental standards, you guys would essentially be able to put new mining practices then in place to prevent some of the selenium from ever reaching the natural water bodies in the first place, or actually even being released to get into the water in the first place. So you guys are already planning the mitigation before you even start with this project.
Correct. That's a really good. It's a really good pickup, and as well as the remediation. So, a lot of people remediation historically. Sometimes remediation can be an afterthought. Yeah, we've got money parked for that, but we want to integrate everything into upfront and in design, because you've got your equipment on site, modern equipment, modern methods. Let's do it all as we go. But you're absolutely right.
Well, it's kind of fascinating, because obviously Calgary, we've got our own water issues going on right now with the feeder main break and repair and all of that. But in doing some research around that, the city of Calgary has actually been pushing rain gardens, and rain gardens might be something that many Calgarians are familiar with. And essentially the plan is to catch the runoff running off of your property, your roof, and trapping it into essentially a wetland with proper plants in it. And it helps prevent sediment and debris from running off of your property into the city's wastewater system and then back into the natural river system. So essentially you're saying, we could do the same thing here. And, the selenium that we can't prevent from getting into the water in the first place, we can put natural wetland systems in place that would then help us clean this before it ever reaches the river. So, and that obviously would help to mitigate some of the concerns that a lot of people have. The South Saskatchewan River, St. Mary's irrigation district, like a lot of irrigation, a lot of farmers, ranchers, everything depends on this water supply. But you brought up
let me just pick up on something there. So the levels, and I don't want to get into the numbers, but the levels of selenium that we will be able to release into the local ecosystem after treating the water are so low that they're not going to get into, like, by the time they get into the Crow's Nest and into the Old Man, you won't even be able to find the atoms. If we have an episode where it's elevated, and say it's twice, say it goes up to 20, it's still not going to be measurable downstream. So the levels of selenium that would cause problems with, say, livestock and humans is so high that in our estimation, and this is something that's part of our education process, is it's so high, it would almost be impossible for us to do it on purpose, much less by accident. So, yeah, we'll have systems in place. We'll manage the selenium. The selenium release will be within the limits that the government sets, and the people downstream are not going to be harmed. And, and the thing is the Crow's Nest flows into the Old Man, and then the other rivers, a lot of the other watersheds flow into the Old Man as well, so we can't even affect them. And that's another one of the things that we have to educate people on is, there's people up near Nanton and High River and Calgary and Edmonton that worry about their water. Well, it's just physically impossible for us to even affect it.
Yeah.
So that's part of the education process. And what's really interesting is the more you talk to people, the more they go, I didn't know that. So we have to do a lot of educating.
Yeah, as this is kind of unfolded, I found that I'll read quite a bit about it. And the more that I read, the more I'm surprised. I'm like, is that part of a lot of the disinformation that's gone out about this is just, it's going to pollute the water. There's going to be all of these problems. But you've got Teck right down the road, and that mine has been operating for how many years?
Decades.
And there's really been no big issues. There's been no incident. There's no.
No, it's interesting. You got to look for it.
Yeah.
You got to go look for trouble.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. It's like we have that same issue. We hear myths and stories, and you go, well, show us. we're the photos, we're the fish, we're the, and the First Nations tell us that, they say, we were here when those mines were operating with no environmental standards.
Yeah.
And we were fine. We lived here on the old man before the dam. We played it, we fished in it. We've never seen an issue.
Yeah.
So yes, selenium, scientifically there can be issues with fish, and the levels have to be surprisingly high. And the standards that they've brought in are very low, right? So you've got a lot of room to move if you do have an issue where you aren't managing it. I don't think we'll ever have that issue, but there's a lot of buffers. But as far as human safety and animal safety goes, it's virtually impossible for any of these projects to have an effect that dire, right? And that's part of education. But what's really interesting is the misinformation, in my view, is lazy, because its catchphrase is like, "Oh, coal's a thirsty business," but they never finish the sentence. They never say, compared to, and then they go, "Oh, wait, actually, coal's not really that thirsty when I compare it to other industries." So it's lazy to be misinformation. It's like buzzwords and catchwords, and if you actually want to find the truth, you got to work.
Well, exactly. And like, there's how many coal mines through Alberta?
I should know that. I'll come back to you on that. There's a lot.
There's a ton.
There's a ton, especially up north, right? In the Hinton area, Grand Cache. So there are coal mines that are operating.
Yeah, safely.
Yep.
And we have no issues with the water. And those water systems in northern Alberta, they flow into the Red Deer, also flows across the country, huge for agriculture. The North Saskatchewan, they all go straight across the prairies. They're all crucial to agriculture. And we're already doing this, and we're doing this historically. And this project would be one of the most modern, with the most sophisticated environmental controls on it.
Absolutely.
And for some reason, we're pushing back on it.
And under the microscope.
Yeah.
Right. So you're not, people aren't going to forget about it. You're not some, copper project in the middle of nowhere that people don't really worry about. So, anything we do is going to be heavily scrutinized, and we're aware of that. That's proper. In fact, when I was working in Australia, so I grew up in Canada, and then I went to Australia for a 6-month holiday and stayed for 35 years. I'm not very good at math, but I came back. But when I was over there, we were developing a uranium project, and we had opposition green groups, and I once said to one of the green groups, what would be really good is if we set up an independent panel. It would be one of our members, one of you guys, and an independent person, and that would be an environmental panel that quarterly would meet. They would assess our last quarter's performance, and then what are we doing next quarter? And you could actually have the oversight. And I invited this guy. I said, you could be part of that. We would do that. We would be transparent. You know what he said? He said, "No, I wouldn't be able to raise money if I did that." Like, it's a business, right?
Yes.
And I get it. And I'm so I would extend that to anyone. Like, we're going to be transparent. We're running public tours. Come up and see the mountain. Come and ask me questions. I'll give my business card to anyone.
Yeah.
Like, when we first put the training program out, we had 126 statements of concern. Now, we shouldn't have seen any of them because they didn't actually conform with the act, but we got them. The AER said, "Here, you deal with them." So we did. And what we did subsequently was we actually wrote to each one of those people and invited them to sit down with me so that I could listen to their concerns. And we had 3 people that realistically, said, "Yeah, we'll do that." And I've already had one of the meetings, and it went really, really well. And we listened and we addressed their concerns, and they went away and said that was a really good meeting. So, we're about being transparent and having people ask the questions.
Yeah, well, and I think with a lot of things, education is the most important. Most specifically for Albertans, and I'm born and raised here. I've lived here my entire life. Albertans like to be asked. And
I've noticed that
the way this, like, the
over
way
a beer,
felt,
mostly.
Yeah. And it feels like to me the way this was originally rolled out was just kind of a surprise to everyone. There hadn't really been a lot of push for new coal development, mining development across Alberta. The NDP had already phased out our thermal coal power generation, and then all of a sudden, it's seemingly out of nowhere for the general public. Jason Kenney stands up and goes, "Well, we're going to rescind 1976 coal policy and, Peter Lougheed's policy." And people think instantly, Peter Lougheed Provincial Park. What? They're going to mine Peter Lougheed Provincial Park. And it all got confusing and just blown right out. So what do you say to the critics who say coal mining, coal development is no longer acceptable, not only in Alberta, but specifically in the Alberta Rocky Mountains and the Eastern Slopes?
I would say to them that they're right in some places, that every project needs to be assessed on its merits. And there will be places where, yes, you shouldn't mine. Absolutely. I agree with that. I'm a mountain biker, I'm a hiker. I'm more mountain biker than hiker, but you get the point.
Mm-hmm.
I love the outside. That's one of the reasons I went into geology, because I got paid to be in the bush and go camping. So you will not meet many geologists who aren't environmentalists as well. But there are also people who understand where minerals come from, and we have a modern life and we need these things. So I would agree that in some instances it is too big a risk to have a mine or other developments, not just mining, but logging and ranching and everything else. There's places you shouldn't do it,
mm-hmm.
but there are places you can do it, and you can do it responsibly, and you can do it safely, and you can do it without harming the environment. And Grassy is one of those places.
Oh, and if you're going to do it, you should do it in a place that it's already been done.
Well, that's right.
Currently a mess.
With modern environmental laws.
Yes.
Like this is one of the things, we had something happen in Australia, the same thing, and they tried to stop a coal mine because they believed if they stopped the coal mine, that coal wouldn't get burnt. Well, that's wrong. It's just going to come from somewhere else. And the somewhere else is going to have lower environmental standards, lower human rights standards, lower labor standards, and the net benefit to the planet is worse. Right? So if you care about the planet, then let's do it here under the microscope. Well, if you only compare about your own little patch or you're an ideologue, well, I can't really help you. But
let's talk about that too, because part of the opposition to this project is that the coal that will be mined from here will not benefit Canada. Like you said, your customers are primarily China, India, South Korea. So the coal is going to be shipped someplace else. But what would be coming back to Canada that we would need this type of coal for?
Well, jobs and foreign income, right? Jobs and foreign income. Mm-hmm. You can't sustain a modern economy through debt. Although there are people who think you can. But you need countries that do well, and Australia is a great example. They have to sell something. Now, luckily, Canada has tourism. Well, Australia has tourism too, but that doesn't pay all the bills. Mm-hmm. And developing your resources responsibly is a way of paying your bills. I mean, Alberta has the lowest tax in the country, and there's a reason for that. People are coming to Calgary. It has net growth, and there's a reason for that. It's a great place to live. I mean, I love Alberta. I'm sure I was born here, and then robbed at birth or something, and moved to Ontario, right?
Yeah.
But the thing is there's a reason that this is a great province, and that's because of its resources and tourism, right? But tourism is very focused in particular areas, as you know. If you go to Lake Louise in the middle of the afternoon during summer, it's there's a lot of tourism. But the thing is the benefits are, like I said, local. So Crow's Nest is better off. That puts less strain on the public purse because people live there, they're unemployed, they have to be subsidized, or Crow's Nest has to be looked after by the province. But there's foreign income coming into the country, and there's royalties, and then there's benefits to the First Nations as well. So it's multifaceted, but it's better to do it here. It's better for the country, it's better for the local people, it's better for the economy, and it's only a little bit, right? But you get lots of little bits and they start to grow.
Well, okay, so one of the things that absolutely drives me crazy about resource development right now, especially in Canada, but mostly in Alberta, is that the opposition is not coming from the areas where these projects are proposed. The vast majority of the opposition to the oil sands is coming from Eastern Canada. On net, Alberta overwhelmingly supports oil sands development. The people in Fort McMurray, as well as the natives in the area, they work in that industry. They're developing those resources. And most of the opposition to this project appears to be coming from in the cities, in Calgary, in Edmonton. People nowhere near these projects. How do the people in the area feel about the projects, and what kind of jobs are those communities looking at from a project like this?
That's a great question. So Crow's Nest is made up of predominantly people who's are descended from coal miners. It was a big mining area, and there's a lot of people there who are descendants, and a lot of them work at Teck. So Crow's Nest, for your viewers, is on the Alberta side of the Crow's Nest Pass, and on the other side is Sparwood and the Elk Valley. And those people, they drive to work every day, and they might be up to an hour, up to 90 minutes to get to work every day on a fairly narrow road when you get on the BC side. And then, so for us, there are people, the First Nations and the people in Crow's Nest, there's already a ready workforce somewhat, but we'll have technical jobs. We'll have, when you look at a mine site, they basically have almost every job you can think of. If you've got, there's surveyors, electricians, and plumbers, and there's chemists, and there's geologists, and there's mining engineers, and truck drivers, and truck mechanics, and diesel mechanics, and it goes on and on and on. It's a big undertaking, right? So
Yeah.
I've developed mine sites before, and it's amazing, and you get people from all over the country coming to work. So the benefit to the workforce is huge, and one of the things that I particularly feel passionate about it is that if we can take someone from the tech organization and they're working at Crow's Nest, well, they're getting an extra hour with their kids every day. So there's so many benefits, some of which you can measure and some which you can't. And we have, so Crow's Nest have markets every week in Blairmore, and we have a booth there, and people come up and they say, when are you starting? What's your roster going to be? What are you going to pay? So there's a lot of interest.
Yeah, so a lot of people in those communities, they want those jobs. And even a friend of mine actually works at Tech. So he drives from Lethbridge and stays in a bunkhouse for his days on, and then drives back to his family in Lethbridge. So, these mines would increase jobs across all of southern Alberta, well, in that general area. But what you're saying is the communities that have a giant green truck, it was one of the world's largest trucks at the time.
Oh yeah,
the giant green mining truck, proudly on display. They're supportive of a project like this.
Yeah, they are. And to go back to your original question about the opposition being not in that area, there are people down there that are concerned for sure. But there is overwhelming support down there, and in fact, we just did some polling, and it's consistent with polling we did 2 years ago and other people's polling. When you go out and actually do proper polling, where you go out and get a random population, Albertans majority of Albertans support coal mining, and that number goes up when you talk about steelmaking coal. So the myth that 85% of Albertans don't support coal mining is just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it comes back to education. And what's interesting is that the people closest to the project are most supportive because they understand it. As you move away, you drift into myth.
Oh, exactly.
And so they're listening to people who aren't experts, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, I find it fascinating. Naheed Nenshi, now the leader of the NDP, has been going around talking about how we have a shortage of schools. I think 20 to 30 schools just in Calgary alone due to the increase. By the looks of things, the federal government will not be slowing down immigration. So what are the actual economic benefits to the province and royalties? But not just royalties. Every single one of these employees will pay income tax.
Correct.
They will pay GST. They will support the local economy. So, not as Alberta as a whole, what kind of economic benefit are we talking about for Alberta, but also what kind of economic benefit are we talking about for the communities in the Crow's Nest Pass?
Yeah, so it's a hard question to answer right now because we don't have a final mine plan, so we don't have those numbers. But the other mine plan that we submitted and was rejected, there was, I think, over 400 people on the construction site and over 300 on the mine site. So those numbers wouldn't be too far off. But as you say, you're generating royalties. Coal prices are going up. Right now, they're around between 200 and 250 a ton. When the study was done previously, it was around 140. So we're seeing the coal price go up. There is royalties. It's not a huge royalty in Alberta, but it is what it is. But it's the income tax, and it's people spending money in that community. And then there's what we call the effect of, for every one job you have in mining, there's several jobs that come off the back of that, because one of our policies is we'll spend local. And there's a lot of companies there that, diesel mechanics, small vehicle mechanics. It's a town. I mean, it's it's interesting because in Australia, mostly the mines are very remote. And so they have to be self-sufficient. They build camps and everyone flies in, flies out, and you've got everything there.
Yeah.
Here, we've already got established businesses that can help with
Mm-hmm.
the operation. So you kind of tap into that. You tap into, these people are already experts. We want to get people trained up, particularly First Nations, get capacity built with them. And it benefits us and it benefits the community to not have fly in, fly out, to have as many people local as you can. And Lethbridge is by and large local, it's not that far away.
Yeah.
Same as Pincher Creek, Brockett and the other towns, Fort Macleod. So there's lots of towns there with people that we're talking to all the time and looking forward to the project getting up.
Yeah, and one of the things that the naysayers are saying is that a project like this is going to deter tourism, and it's going to prevent it from becoming, the next Canmore or something like that. What do you say for that?
Well, Canmore has a mine. It's an old mining town. It was a coal mining town up until I think 1979, and it was a massive mine. Mm-hmm. Like they had to do a lot of work afterwards to make it safe to build, Three Sisters on top of it. It also has an existing mine. A lot of people forget that, right? There's the limestone mine just up the road.
Yeah.
The Exshaw, there's the cement plant. So it actually has a mine. Seems to be doing okay.
Everybody driving from Calgary to Banff drives right past it.
And what do? They stop and they take a picture.
Yeah.
People are interested in these things, right? So Crow's Nest has this fascinating mining history, right? It has history of prohibition and bootlegging. It's a really fascinating place. And why can't you have both, mm-hmm. right? Fernie has it. Fernie's just down the road from mining. The Elk Valley, people go there fishing, hunting. But, to me, Crow's Nest has this really unique opportunity to be a really unique tourist destination because there's so much old mining infrastructure around. And people look at Coal Bank in Banff. Mm-hmm. That's an old mining town, and there's a hiking trail through it. So there's this really neat opportunity to have both, to have a town that's actually vibrant. So now you've got more hotels, you've got more shops, you get more tourists. Because one of the problems is, what comes first? You go build a bunch of stuff and hope the tourists come? Or do you just organically build the town up through an industry that then allows more tourism? So to me, you go, okay, let's put some money into some of these old buildings to make them safe. Let's tell a story. Because there's a lot of them. We walk mm-hmm. around the bush and get paid to do it. And we find lots of really interesting historical things. And there's nothing like walking through history. So I think you can have both. And I think Crow's Nest has a really unique opportunity to be a unique tourist destination through mining. And there's places in Australia like Ballarat and Bendigo and Victoria that are historical mining towns, and people come there to see the mining history. Mm-hmm. If you want at Banff National Park or Jasper, you go to Canmore and you go to Banff, right? But if you want a different experience, and you're close to Waterton, you're close to Castle, you're close to your BC, there's no reason this couldn't be a really unique tourist destination and have both industries.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it doesn't have to be one or the other. Correct. And there's plenty of examples across the world of where you can do both. One of the things that I find fascinating about this is right now, as you said, this is one of the poorest areas of the province. There's not a massive amount of income. But in order to develop a tourism industry, you need someone to invest in that area. And right now, outside of coal mining, there's not a lot of other industry rushing into that area to make investments. So do you see an investment of this size and of this type actually helping the community grow and be able to invest back into itself to diversify its industry and not just rely on the coal mining industry?
Not only can we have. So one of the things that we did, Riversdale did, was a land swap with the golf course. So the golf course, Crow's Nest Golf Course, was down on the flats next to Highway 3. And so what the company did was they did a land swap, built them a new golf course up in the more hilly area, and built them a new clubhouse. And it is a major attraction to Crow's Nest. Mm-hmm. It is I think it's been judged as the top 3 golf courses in Alberta. It's beautiful scenery. So we've done it. We've proved that you can do it. And that is one of the biggest and best tourist destinations in that part of the world right now. So yeah, absolutely, you can do it. And then if you're really passionate, as I am, and planned about it, you've got the old town of Lille. Access is really difficult. You've got the old mine at Hillcrest, which had a really horrendous disaster, but it's part of history. Yeah. You've got this tipple that's right on the highway, right? You have a little pull out, people go see it. It's fascinating. There's so much history there that people are driving past to get somewhere else. We'll just stop them there, stay in Crow's Nest, and find out this has got a rich history, and it was a big part of the province's history.
Well, exactly. Well, I mean, the Frank Slide's down there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a geologist, so Frank Slide is just to me one of the most fascinating things in history, and the fact that the mountain is still moving and they're still monitoring it on a daily basis, and it, like, a lot of people just haven't. They drive through it. They're on their way to Fernie. They're on their way to Cranbrook. They're on their way to the Kootenays, and they don't stop and they don't actually check out the history. And there is a lot of great history in there. But without a project like this moving into the area, what incentive right now do they have to go build hotels? Well, if you've got 300 people coming to do construction, 400 people to do a construction project, they're going to build some hotels in the area. You're going to get the investment. When those hotels are done, when we're finished with construction and we're moving on to permanent mining, people are going to move to the area and they're going to build more hotels, and then they're going to diversify, and they're going to use the new golf course and other investments in the area to grow. And I just don't think that's a bad thing. I grew up just outside of Medicine Hat. Right in my backyard is the old Ajax coal mine. Well, the city of Medicine Hat built a regional park right beside it, Echodale Regional Park.
Yeah.
And, it's the entrance to the old coal mine, and they have the history. That's, I guess that would have closed well before I was born. But this essentially is just taking the history of the coal mining across the province and what we've already done and what we've done well in other areas, and putting a modern touch and a modern spin on a modern project on this.
That's right. And going back to your Canmore example, there's a place there where there's a dog park, and next to it is a recreation area called Quarry Lake.
Mm-hmm.
It's a coal quarry, it's a coal mine that's been reclamated, and people use it. And there's lots of examples of that around not only Canada but all around the world where reclamation is actually very successful. Sometimes people haven't done the right thing, right?
Yeah.
But as I said, we're going to be under the microscope. We're going to be held to a very high standard. We have our own high standards internally, and we have part of our mission, vision, and values is to leave a lasting legacy, and that's what we're doing, and that's what we want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. So what are the next steps now for this project? Because obviously it has seen some of the most interesting hurdles. I think of any project's history. I think this Tech Frontier oil sands mine and this specific coal project have been probably Canada's two most bungled projects that have ever had. Just the goalposts keep moving. It seems like you get to exactly what we need to do to meet the environmental protection demands, and the goalposts move. So what's next for this project? What's next for your company?
So it's a drilling program. So one of the findings from the Joint Review Panel report that came out and denied the application was that there were some shortcomings in the work that had been done by the previous team, and the regulator was very specific that there was a requirement for more site-specific data. So that means collecting data on site, and some of that data requires drilling. So we designed a drilling program. It wasn't a drilling program to extend the resource. The drilling was all going to be done inside the known pit boundary to get geotechnical data. So that helps you with your footprint, because if you have good geotechnical data, it means that your pit walls can be a little bit steeper, just as safe, and you don't have as big a footprint. We needed more what we call hydrogeology. So that's groundwater, surface water, and to do that we had to drill. And so we put in a drilling application just under a year ago. And that obviously, because it's grassy, garnered a lot of attention. And so, it's interesting you talk about Frontier, because there's only been 2 drilling programs that have gone to a public hearing. It's Frontier and Grassy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so that's not normal either for this type of
no.
program.
Oh, no. But the regulator, because there was a lot of public interest, decided it was best to have a hearing. And look, we're on board with that. We're ready for the hearing when hopefully
you're talking to me.
Correct.
A lot of people really think of this as some massive national foreign company that is going to come here, ruin this mountain, and take the money and run. And if anything, you guys have been trying to do an outward education program and say no. And like you've said, you're inviting people to go look at the mine, go look at the project. So this isn't some evil corporation and some faceless person that's doing this. You guys are trying, or you guys are doing everything that's required of you.
Well, that's right. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. You know, the last time it went through the approvals process, the whole coal policy thing blew up. And so the goalposts certainly did move, right? Hugely. And unfortunately, the project got caught up in it. But it is what it is, right? And now what we're doing is we're taking the findings from that report. And in fact, I always look at silver linings, okay? So this mine will be better, lower impact, lower water use, right? It's going to be a better outcome. So although it's been kind of a pain for everyone, it's a better outcome. And that's what the regulator's there for, okay? What they should have done was said, yeah, you can build it, but here's a bunch of conditions. They didn't. We are where we are. Now, the next phase, as we said, drill, get more data, enhance our planning to be even better, and then we'll see from there. So there's no application in the process right now. We have the right to do a new application if we want. But right now we're going to do this drilling, work on our mine plans and see what that looks like. And so far, you know, we've taken a lot of feedback from people. We do what's called the listening tour. We go out and listen to people. As you say, that everyone likes to be asked their opinion.
Albertans like to be asked, educated, and then give their permission.
Correct.
And I feel like every Albertan, every Albertan feels this way. And it doesn't matter what the project is. They feel like they personally have to say yes to something, whether it's to you out loud on social media or just in their own head. They have to be convinced. So
well, that's right, because there's a real historic connection to land in Alberta, and even people coming into the province feel it. It's different. It's different, and land is important. And so we know that, and we're doing what we can to make sure, you know, people are educated. And, you know, if I have to talk to everybody in Alberta, it's going to take a while, but I'll give it a crack.
Yeah.
You know,
well, we'll try to help our members will hopefully share the message. But I mean, yeah, we are like the birthplace of Canada's national parks. You know, we've got Banff, the first national park, right? And then Peter Lougheed, a conservative. You know, we conserve our environment. Our farmers and ranchers are probably some of the biggest environmentalists ever, and you know, they've been villainized, you know, with cow farts and fertilizer. You know, our oil and gas industry is the cleanest oil and gas industry on this planet.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they've been vilified. And C59, they're not even allowed to talk about the good things they do anymore. And our coal industry, there's been no major coal disasters in Alberta. Environmentally anyways. You know, we've been mining this resource historically and responsibly for hundreds of years without issue. And now it feels like this is just the next one, the next industry that they're going to vilify. And it seems like this is just wildly driven by activists, and all intelligence around the issue is just evaporating.
And you know what's interesting is, okay, say the activists are successful and coal mining stops in Alberta. If you think the activists are going to stop at coal, you are naive and misguided. You're next.
Oh,
right. And we already know the activists want everyone to be vegan and stop eating beef. We already know that they're trying to stop oil, right? We know that. So to me, look, a lot of ranchers support the project. There's a fallacy that all the ranchers are against it. That's just not true.
Yeah.
And it's mainly the local ranchers who support it. So we as primary producers, whether it's food or beef or oil and gas or coal, we are primary producers. We're earning money for the province. We're providing jobs for the province. We should be all working together to educate and ensure that we're following the standards, and ensure that we call out the people who are lying and spreading myths and misinformation as a team. Team Alberta, right? We should be doing that. This is Alberta.
Yeah.
You know, it's people should be proud of what we do here.
Well, and I mean, you need metallurgical coal to build windmills. You need this coal to build solar panels. Yeah. So if we're going to start to
you need more of it.
Yeah,
you need more of it. So, you know, I ran a uranium company. I've run iron ore companies. a company. I ran a copper nickel company. I know where the minerals go and what they're needed. Renewables have a place, but they have inherently lower energy density that will never change, and they require more metal. So as a geologist, I'm all for renewables. It's all, yeah, let's build all renewables. We need more metal. Yeah. So you need more of it, right? And you need transmission lines, and because of the very nature of the intermittency and how it's spread out. So, you know, you can't have one thing without understanding that there's a requirement for the raw materials for it, right? Unless you just want to import everything, in which case your economy suffers hugely. So yeah, there's steel in everything. I mean, you know that pipe that broke? Yeah. That was concrete reinforced with steel. Yeah. Every time you see a concrete structure, it's full of steel, right? It is in every part of your life. Yeah. And you cannot live without it.
Like electric vehicles, they need steel. It's just
syringes,
everything,
medical equipment,
and
forks.
To me, I always feel like if we are going to do these projects, that we should do them in Alberta, create Alberta jobs, and use our resources and reinvest back into our own province and our own country, for that matter.
Well, not only that. So that's really interesting. And when you develop expertise in modern mining that has the lowest impact globally, you can also export that expertise. So you look at Australia and you look at Canada, mining expertise in Australia and Canada has gone around the world, right? It's an export. Those people are working overseas. Yeah. So we not only have a chance to, you know, show that Grassy can be done properly and responsibly, we can actually take that expertise and take it overseas. There's so many opportunities.
Well, and that's the thing. Canadian ingenuity could actually lower global emissions, clean up global industry across the world.
Well, we know that.
And generally make the world a better place to begin with.
Absolutely.
We are running out of time, though. I could probably sit here and talk about this with you for hours. Yeah. Just a fascinating project to me. But where can our viewers, where can the Western Standard members get more information on this project and start to help educating themselves?
Sure. So they can go to northback.ca. That's the website. And on the website, there's a lot of what we call factoids, and there's going to be more. Or they can email me directly, ceo@northback.ca. And they can send me an email, and they can ask me questions, or they can tell me I'm full of crap. Well, that's whatever, but I will answer them all.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Mike, for coming in today. I appreciate it. And thank you to you, the Western Standard members, for joining us today. If you're not already, you can become a member at westernstandard.news, $10 a month or $100 a year. Thank you very much for tuning in, and have a good night.